Hello everyone, I hope you guys are doing good and following all the guidelines given by the government in this lockdown period, and I'm sure you guys are keeping safe and your families are safe. Today I'm starting the first chapter of class 12 physics. Before I go ahead, and let me tell you the things that we need to study in class 12. We have to study electromagnetism, then your optics and the modern physics. That's all. So when we talk about electromagnetism, it basically consists of 4-5 topics. Essentially we have 3 topics, and electromagnetism is all about dealing with the charge, studying the charge. That's all. Alright, now when we deal with the charge, we talk about all the possibilities with respect to the motion of charge, whether the charge is at rest, is it moving at constant velocity, or it's accelerating. So electromagnetism is divided in 3 parts based on the nature of charge. So let us start. When the charge is at rest, we say it is electrostatic, right? Later on we'll discuss about the electric field, and then we'll enter into capacitor, and of course we'll have your current electricity coming to this, which is a motion of charge later on. When the charge is moving with uniform velocity, that part of electromagnetism is called as magnetism. And when the charge is accelerating, we call it as electromagnetic waves. So you can see this electromagnetism will cover up around 40% of the entire syllabus. The first 3-4 lectures will be on the electrostatic. In that we'll study about the nature of charge, property of charge, electric field, electric potential. When it comes to magnetism, we'll study about the magnetic effect of current, right, permanent magnet and all, and then EM waves. Well, after that we'll be having this your optics and all, and then the modern physics. So these all things which we're learning now, we're going to learn, is like very old type of physics. It has been discovered maybe 400 or 500 years back. The modern physics is all about, which is the development in science which has happened in past 60, 70 years, 50, 60 years. So they are termed as modern physics. Alright, so let's quickly begin with this electrostatic. Well, if I am dealing with the charge, I should know certain properties of charge, right? So knowing the properties of charge is really, really important. So let us understand first how many type of charges exist in this universe. So essentially we have 2 kinds of charge which exist, the positive and negatives. There is no exception in terms of physics, only positive and negative, that's all. Now these positive and negative charges have different features. First of all, like charges repel each other. That's a very common thing. I'm sure most of you must be knowing that. And the unlike charges attract each other. So if I have a positive, they will be repelling each other. Negative, they will again repel each other. If I have a pair of positive and negatives, they will attract each other. So if something is pushing each other, there should be some force existing between them, right? The force could be with the direct physical contact, or it could be without any physical contact. Here as you can see, these 2 charges are not touching each other, they are not in contact, still they will repel or attract each other. Means there is certain amount of force which is existing and which we cannot see. So 12th standard is all about visualizations. In class 11th we have seen probably the body is moving, accelerating, deaccelerating, we have seen the body rotating, so everything was quite visible. But in class 12 we have to probably imagine most of the thing. Fair enough. So the people who has a better understanding of imaginations, they'll be actually getting these things nicely. And one more thing, I have read it somewhere that the people who have studied a lot of comics in the childhood develops a better sense of understanding, imaginations, right? So this is something our research has told. So if you have studied a lot of comics in the childhood, that's of course going to help you to imagine physics in a better way. Alright then. Now when we say charge, we know we have positive and negatives charges. Now we should know, what is the name given to that charge? What is the smallest unit of charge, right? So I'm sure you guys must be knowing that electron is the smallest charge that we know. Probably some of you must have heard about quarks, but the existence of quarks is still under a sort of question whether it exists or not, is it practical or not. So basically that electron, that's what we have to study. So we will be focusing on the electrons, will not be getting into quarks and all right. So the electron is represented with it's represented as E. It's a negative charge, so and charge on this is 1.6 times 10 to the power of minus 19 coulomb. So the unit of charge is coulomb, which is given on the name of coulombs, which we will talk about later. Alright then, now when we talk about the smallest charge, it means that there is no other charge smaller which is possible than electron, right? And every charge exists with a mass. So the mass of electron is 9.1 into 10 to the power of minus 31 kg. So small, right? And we have one more charge which is called proton. So in any atom we have electron, protons and the neutrons. So proton is taken as a positive charge and the charge is almost equals to the charge of electron. So the mass of proton is 1.67 times 10 to the power of minus 27 kg. So proton is heavier than electron. Fair enough. Now after dealing with the mass and all, we should know that every body is having charge which is negative and positive, but the electron revolves in the orbit, right? If I look at an atom, it's a part of chemistry, I'm sure you guys know about this. In any nucleus we have protons and the neutron, and the electrons revolve around in the orbit, right? So this is more vulnerable for the detachment. Means this electron can be transferred from one atom to the different one, right? I'm sure you must have heard about the ions formations and all. Fair enough. Now let me take a neutral body. If I have, let's say, a neutral body which does not have any charge, right? So when I say neutral body, does it mean that it does not have any electrons, no negative charge, nothing? Well, that's not correct. A neutral body is a body in which we have equal number of neutrons, like protons and electron. So they just subsides the effect of each other. A neutral body does not mean that it does not have charge. Yes, it has charge, but it has equal number of protons and the electrons. Let's say for example, if I have a body over here, all right, and if I bring one more body over here, let's say one electron from here is detached and transferred to this different body. So what's happened? Once electron is taken away, it lacks the negative charge, right? And the proton is not moving, so by default it will be getting some positive charge, isn't it? Because the number of electron is now lesser than the number of protons, so it gets a negative charge. At the same time, positive charge. Now at the same time, it will get an excessive of electron, right? So the moment we have excessive of electrons, it will be having negative charge on this. Now the point is, can we have 1.5 electrons coming out of this body? No, that's not possible, right? Because we know that the smallest unit of charge is electron, and we can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 electrons coming out of it and getting to the another body. So here we have one new thing that we need to know, that's called quantization of charge, right? Means the smallest possible charge is electron, and any charge which can be possible, which can be calculated, should be in the integral multiple of electron, right? So the possible charge is given as plus or minus n times of E. And this is called quantization of charge. Now it's very easy to understand that probably we cannot have a charge as 1.5 times of electron. No, it's not possible. At the same time we can have 2e, 3e, 4e. So it means that n is integer, right? So the existence of charge is only in the integral multiple of electronic charge, right? Fair enough. Now next thing that we need to learn is the conservation of charge, right? I'm sure you guys must have heard about it, you know it by default. Let's say I have a body, probably I have a body like this, something like that, all right. Okay, the ink is over. Let's say if I have probably 2 coulomb of charge here plus 2 coulomb of charge. Let's say body A, body B has, let's say, minus 3 coulomb of charge, and body C inside it, probably I have just kept probably 4 coulomb of plus charge. Let's say I did something with these charges. I just probably rearranged them or did something else. Some operations was done on this charge, and finally I could see something like, this body A has got probably negative 5 coulomb of charge. Body B has probably, let's say, got plus 3 coulomb of charge, and body C has got, let's say, some charge Q which I do not know, right? And if someone asks me that what should be the value of this charge on body C in this part C, and I just want to make one thing very clear, that this system is isolated. It is not in contact with any other system, any other conductor. It's an isolated system. All right. So what's going to happen now? If I look at the net charge on this body before I did some reassembling or something, it should have been how much? 2 plus 4, 6 minus 3. The net charge on this should be 3 coulomb. Right. How much charge do we have on this? It should be minus 5 plus 3, negative 2 coulomb plus this Q. Now, let me tell you something. If the system is isolated, the charge will remain conserved. The total charge, the net charge, will not change. It means this should be equals to this, right? So if I look at this thing, I'll be having Q is equals to how much? 5 coulomb. So this charge Q should be equals to 5 coulomb. So this is a very, very important property of charge, that in an isolated body, isolated system, the charge remains conserved. It's very, very important to understand this. Now let's move on and talk something about this property. Okay, so here by this time we have learned that the smallest possible charge is electron. Its value we know, its mass we know. We have learned about the neutral bodies, we have learned about the quantization. Now this is the conservation of charge. One more thing I want to tell you, I'm sure you guys have heard about this, that the mass of the body changes with velocity, right? In the modern physics we'll be discussing more about it, but as of now you should know that if a body approaches the speed of light, anything close to that, the mass will change. The mass does not remain constant, and I'm sure you guys must have seen this formula. M is equals to m naught over 1 minus v square over c square, where m naught is the mass at normal condition, stationary mass, rest mass, v is the velocity of that particle, and c of course is the speed of the light. So if any object gets velocity closest to the speed of light, the mass will change. Fair enough? It means I can understand that mass depends upon the velocity. At the same time, charge does not vary with the velocity. So the next property that we have right now is the mass charge is irrelevant of the velocity. You guys can pause the video and you can write down the charge is irrelevant of the velocity. It does not depends on the velocity. Fair enough? Now, having said that, charges attract and repel each other. The like charges repel and the unlike dislike charges attract each other. So now the next part of this chapter is talking about the Coulomb's law. So the next is Coulomb's law. Coulomb's law. In short, the Coulomb's law deals with the type of force, it deals with the study of force of interaction between two charges, right? So it deals with the force of interaction between charges. Interaction between charges. Let's say, for example, if I have a charge 1, let's say a positive charge Q1 kept here, and another charge, let's say Q2 being kept here. Let's say even this is a positive charge. So what happens? This will be repelled by this, and even this will be repelled by this charge. So repulsive could be, so force on this would be in the right hand direction. So the force on this will be written as force on 2 due to charge 1, and this is how we represent force on 2 by charge 1. That's a way of representing this. And the force on this would be in this direction. That should be force on 1 due to charge 2. Fair enough? Now let's say the mass of this charge is m, and I'm going to keep, let's say mass of this is also m. Alright. Now what we can do now, so this was actually dealt is an experimental outcome. So I'm sure you guys know the meaning of law. So law is like, when someone gives a theory and if it is not proved incorrect, that remains as a law until it is proved incorrect. So that is a law, right? So he has given some theory, some theory, which again is now used as a law, and so far it has not been proved incorrect, and it's been so long that it has not been proven correct. So it's very much clear that it will remain as a law probably in the in the future. Now what happens if the mass of this charge is m, and let's suppose I'm just holding these two charges, if I leave this charge, this will be moving towards right, isn't it? So, and if I lift this charge, this will be moving towards left. It is noticed that F on charge 2 by 1, the magnitude of that is equals to the force on charge 1 due to 2. Alright, so if the mass is same, the velocity with which this will move towards left will be same as the velocity with which this will move towards right. So this is nothing but an action reaction pair, right? So what is called action reaction pair? When two bodies exert equal amount of force on each other in opposite direction, that's called action reaction pair. Fair enough. Now as you can see, I'm using the vector sign. I'll be dealing with the vector part of this in the next video. As of now, understand, if it is a vector, we should be knowing, having the sense of the concept of vectors, which we have done in class 11th. If you have missed anything on that, you can just check out my videos list. I have made 2 videos on the vectors. Just go and revise that. So because we'll be doing a lot of questions on this which needs the concept of vector and of course the laws of motion. So class 11th physics will be playing its own role when we're dealing with this class 12th electrostatic. And in this, since we're talking about the force again is a vector quantity, and we'll be dealing a lot about the vectors in this in the upcoming sessions when we have a lot of questions coming to you. As of now, let's understand that force is the Coulomb's force. Electrostatic force is an action reaction pair. Fair enough. Now if I just, let's say, I have one charge over here Q1 and one charge over here Q2. The force on this, let's say if I draw something like this, F on 1 due to 2 and F on, let's suppose this direction, F on 2 due to 1. This is actually following the statements of Coulomb's law, right? They repel each other in the opposite direction, and I'm doing the same. The direction of the forces are opposite, right? But is this correct? No, it's not correct. So something is missing in this statement, and that is the force of interaction should be acting along the line joining the charges. That's really important to understand, and that's called central force. The force acting towards the center of the line joining them is called central force. So the Coulomb's force of electrostatic, is action reaction pair as well as a central force. So this is not correct. It should have been like this, along the line joining. Let's suppose if I have Q1 and Q2 over here, based on the nature of charge, either it could be repulsive or could be attractive. You can see the force will be acting along the line joining them, right? So this is the one of the properties of the electrostatic forces, that they are equal and opposite, okay, right? And they form an action reaction pair, and they are central force. So Coulombic force or electrostatic force are central force. Okay, you guys can make a note of this one. Meanwhile, I'll just erase this screen now. Okay, now let us introduce mechanics over here, and I'm sure you guys have heard about this momentum. And if you remember the conservative force, right? So what happens if the net force acting on a system is 0, then those kind of force are called conservative force. Now if I look at these charges Q1 and Q2, and as you know, the force is a vector quantity. Towards right, F on 2 due to 1, and towards left is F on 1 due to 2. Since there is no external force acting on this, it means F of 1 2 should be magnitude should be equals to F of 2 1. It means F of 1 minus 2, 1 2 minus F of 2 minus 1 should be 0, right? That makes a sense that the electrostatic force is conservative force. Just make a note of this one. They are conservative force. Conservative force. Alright. Let's have a quick example to understand this thing in detail. Let's say if I have a charge over here with mass, let's say m, and here we have probably 2 coulomb of charge, and here I have one more charge, let's say positive 2 coulombs. Okay, let's say positive 2 coulomb. I have one more body of, let's say, mass 3m, and the charge over here is positive 4 coulomb. Initially I have kept them at rest. Okay, now the moment I leave them, let's say this body started moving towards left with, let's say, speed of 30 meter per second. My question to you, what will be the speed of this object? That should be definitely in this direction because they are positive charge. My question is, what would be the velocity of this mass v? Pause the video and just try and solve it. Right? Fine. Now as we know, let me just solve it. As we know, the electrostatic force is conservative force. It means the momentum should be conserved, right? Yep. So the initial momentum is how much in this body system? When I'm leaving this, initial momentum is how much? 30 times m, right? That should be equals to the final momentum. Okay, that should be how much? For this body it should be 3m, right, times, let's say, some velocity. Alright, so the mass into velocity, and this will be how much? I'll be getting, this v should be how much? 10 meter per second, right? So by this time we know the direction of force, they are equal, they are conservative, right, and they act along the line joining the two bodies. Now let us find the value of the force. How to find that value, right? So the Coulomb laws says that the force between the two bodies is directly proportional to product of the charges. It is a proportional to Q1, and this is also proportional to Q2. And it says that it is inversely proportional to the square of distance between them. So when I combine all this stuff, what do we get? F is equals to proportional to Q1 Q2 by R square. And when the sign of proportionality is removed, we get a constant, and that is given as F is equals to Q1 Q2 by R square, where K is equals to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. So the force will be equals to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by R square. So this is the magnitude of the force. This is the magnitude of the electrostatic force. Okay, over here this is U naught, E naught is called, epsilon naught is called permittivity of free space. Permittivity of free space. It means that the electrostatic force depends upon the medium in which it is kept, isn't it? If suppose if it is not free space, then the force between the same two bodies kept in a different medium would be different. Quickly, so let us understand the meaning of this permittivity, and let's see one example on this permittivity and how does it affect the forces acting between them, right? So you guys can make a note meanwhile that the force between the two charged body depends upon the medium in which it is kept, and this is called permittivity of the free space. All okay? Now one more thing I just want to add over here is the the unit of this K constant K. This is nothing but Newton meter square per Coulomb square. Alright, you guys should know the I'm like unit. Probably you can just figure out the values. Of course, with these things you must have learned this in the unit and dimension. Okay, now let's see what is the meaning of this permittivity and all. So we should know that E is equals to E naught times ER, where E naught is the permittivity of free space, and this ER is called dielectric constant. Dielectric constant. So basically this is nothing but the permittivity of the medium with respect to free space. All okay? So this E naught is called as permittivity of the free space, and ER is called relative permittivity of that medium with respect to free space. All okay? Now Over here, this is also called as dielectric constant, and in some book you might see that this is represented as K. Let's say I have two charges kept in certain medium with a dielectric constant, or ER is given as, let's say, probably 90. It could be anything, any medium with the value of ER, or you can say equals to K as 90. All okay? Then the force will be given as 1 by 4 pi epsilon. It should not be epsilon naught, right? Because now we're talking about the specific medium. It is not in the free space. Q1, Q2 over R square. Let's say this is Q1 and this is Q2. And this is the line joining these two charges. Okay, irrespective of the nature of the force, like charge, be it positive or be it negative, the force will be given as 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by R square. So we have to write it. We know that the formula says it should be 4 pi epsilon naught, right? Over here, if ER is 90, then the value of this A should be how much? A should be 90 times of epsilon naught using this thing. So this force will now be written as 1 by 4 pi. E will be 90 times of E naught. Let me put it here, 90 epsilon naught times Q1 Q2 over R square. So I can actually say that this is nothing but 1 over 90 times of 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by R square, and this is the force on these two charged particles in the free space. So I can say that the force, let's say this is F dash, then I can say F dash is nothing but 1 by 90th of the force that is in the free space. So this is the significance of dielectric medium. We'll be discussing more about this in the capacitor topic. As of now, we'll keep it over here. Okay. Now let's talk about one of the different property of electrostatic force. The first property that we have learned is they are axion reaction pair, and they have central force, that is they act towards the line joining along the line joining the charges. Second thing, electrostatic force is conservative force, right? So the law of momentum conservation will be valid in this case. And let us talk about the third property, which is very, very important property. Let's say, for example, I'm going to discuss that with an example again. Let's say, for example, I have a charge Q1 over here and Q2, let's say, over here. All right. Now, and this is Q2. So they will have some force of interaction, electrostatic force. So let's say the force on Q1, assume both are positive in nature. They could be anything, could be positive or negative. Let it be, let's say positive and, okay, let's keep positive and negative. So the force on charge Q1 should be in this direction, and let me write F on 1 due to 2. Alright. Now let me introduce one more charge in this system. Let's say I have one more charge coming over here. Let's say keep it negative Q3. So even this will be influenced because of the presence of this charge, right? So this will feel a force in this direction. So let's say the force on 1 due to 3. Now the entire idea is this body is influenced by this body as well as this body. But my question is, because of this presence of this charge Q3, will the effect of Q2 changes on Q1? I mean to say, the force F12, will that be influenced by the presence of this charge? Though it is also exerting certain force on this, but will that affect this? No. So the idea is, the force between two charged particle does not vary, is independent of the another particles present. It's the other thing that this will have a different force now, it will be having a force this one as well as this one, but the force on this because of this will remain same. Alright, so it means that the forces acting on the body is independent of the another charge present over there. Fair enough? And this is where we'll lead with the superposition principle. So guys, I'm stopping it here itself. So today we have discussed about the charge, its properties, the force, its property, and we have discussed about how the charge depends on the is independent of mass, whereas the velocity, whereas the mass is dependent on the velocity. We have learned about the quantization of charge, that the charge can be present only in the integral multiple of electronic charge, which is 1.6 times 10 to the power of minus 19. In the next part, we'll be discussing some questions on the Newton Coulomb's law, and then we'll go ahead with the electric field. Right? That's all for today. Happy, thanks for watching. I'll see you again. Bye.